Welcome to the second session of the case discussion, management of chronic renal failure and the hypertension. Now we will discuss the case 2, a 65-year-old diabetic man with stage 4 chronic kidney disease with history of hypertension and had significant weight gain during the past 3 months. He presented to the renal clinic for routine checkup. Physical examination revealed bilateral edema of lower limbs, and his blood pressure is 190 by 105 millimeter of Hg. Urine analysis revealed albuminuria, and urine output was 160 ml per day. So this is the case of chronic kidney disease patient with the hypertension. The questions are: mention how you to treat the edema in this patient. So we have to study the which drugs are useful in the management of edema with chronic kidney disease. Mention the antihypertensive drug of best choice for the treatment of hypertension in this patient. Justify your answer. And how you can monitor the treatment of hypertension in this patient. Monitor. So here we have to treat two conditions of patient here in the chronic kidney disease patient. The first one is edema and the second one is hypertension. So let us see the chronic kidney disease patient. With the first, we will treat the hypertension and then edema. Treatment of hypertension. Which drugs are useful? As per the Joint National Committee 8 recommendations, the goal of hypertension in the patient with the chronic kidney disease should be less than 140 by 90. 140 systolic and 90 diastolic. Here, the drugs are recommended are generally A, as we discussed in the therapeutics of hypertension. A for angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, A for angiotensin receptor blockers, and A for aliskiren. These three categories are drugs are most widely used and significantly benefits as compared to other drugs. Why we need to treat hypertension? If it is untreated hypertension, it may lead to decrease in the EGFR if it is untreated. And that's why we have to control the blood pressure, and it is the most important factors which will prevent the progression of kidney disease. The drugs are angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers. Now, these two drugs you already studied in your previous blocks. cardiovascular block. Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors are preferred in patients with type 1 and type 2 diabetes due to effect on renal hemodynamics. Why? Because angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers should be considered for all patients with diabetes and microalbuminuria, even if their blood pressure is normal. So ACE inhibitors, or we can say ARB, are most widely used if the patient having the chronic kidney disease plus hypertension plus diabetes or plus microalbuminuria. Examples of angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors are captopril, lisinopril, pril, and examples of angiotensin receptor blockers are losartan, valsartan, candesartan. When you start this angiotensin converting enzyme therapy, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors therapy or angiotensin receptors therapy, there may be chances of increase of serum creatinine up to 30% within first 2 months of the therapy, and no need to worry. It is an acceptable if there is increase in the serum creatinine up to 30%. We can also recommend the combination of both drugs to decrease the proteinuria, but this combination of two drugs including ACEI and ARB will double the serum creatinine and may leads to a risk of dialysis. And there is one question in our case: how can we monitor this therapy? The beneficial effect of angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers therapy occur over the course of months to years. So the patient must be monitored for changes in kidney functions and albuminuria, and for hyperkalemia, which is the adverse effect of angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blocker. If the patient has bilateral kidney artery stenosis and the pregnancy, then ACEI and ARBs are contraindicated. Aliskiren, which is a direct renin inhibitor, decreases the albuminuria independent of the blood pressure control in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Then the clearance of all angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors except fosinopril is reduced in chronic kidney disease. Why? Because it will metabolize at kidney. So that's why initiate the therapy at lower initial doses and subsequently titrate the dose adjustment necessary. But except fosinopril. Fosinopril its active metabolites does not affect the kidney functions. So that's why fosinopril does not need to reduce the dose of fosinopril in the chronic kidney disease. Because its metabolites are inactive and does not affect the kidney functions. So we are treating the hypertension in the chronic kidney disease, and we are discussing angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. So angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors should be avoided in chronic kidney disease patients undergoing dialysis, hemodialysis with polyacrylonitrile membrane. This is the membrane used for the hemodialysis. Why? Because this polyacrylonitrile membrane dialyzer increases the bradykinin production, whereas angiotensin converting enzymes decreases the breakdown of bradykinin. And these both actions increases the bradykinin level, systemic or immune mediated reaction, and leads to anaphylactic reactions. That's why angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors should be avoided if the patient is undergoing hemodialysis with polyacrylonitrile membrane. Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors captopril, lamipril, or angiotensin receptor blocker, losartan, telmisartan are preferred drug as they decrease the protein urea and the decrease the rate of decline in the EGFR. So captopril, ramipril, losartan, telmisartans can be used. But remember, these are the or, either angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor or angiotensin receptor blocker. How they act? They produce vasodilation of the glomerular efferent arterioles, decrease the filtration pressure, decrease diabetic microalbuminuria, and retarding the progression of kidney disease. This drug also preserve the renal function and cause fewer adverse effects than other antihypertensive agents, and plus increase insulin receptor sensitivity in diabetes mellitus. So these three are the benefit of using ACEIs or ARBs in the management of hypertension in the chronic kidney disease patient. We have another option, calcium channel blocker. may be useful alone or in combination with ACEIs. Dosage adjustment is not required in patient with the kidney disease. And we know that the calcium channel blockers are categorized into two categories: dihydropyridine agents and non-dihydropyridine agents. Dihydropyridine agents examples are amlodipine, felodipine, have similar effect and may be used instead of angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors in absence of albuminuria. If the patient is having the contraindications with the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and patient does not having the albuminuria, then we can recommend calcium channel blocker dihydropyridine derivative, which generally act on the vessels, blood vessels, amlodipine, felodipine. And the non-dihydropyridine agents, which generally act on the cardiovascular system, cardiac system, cardiac muscles, diltiazem and verapamil, have negative chronotropic and ionotropic effects, and they should be used with care in patient with the heart disease, because the most important is the, we can say, the non-dihydropyridine derivatives, because they mainly act on the cardiac muscles. So these are the drugs which are used in the management of hypertension in chronic kidney diseases. We have next option, diuretics. If the patient having the edema, in our case the patient having the edema, these drugs can be effective for blood pressure, volume control and edema in patient with advanced kidney disease, and if residual kidney function is substantial, urine output is more than 100 ml per day. Their effect must be frequently reevaluated on the basis of urine output and any effect on volume control. So diuretics is also considered in the patient of hypertension if the patient is having edema. And amongst the diuretics, examples are the thiazide diuretics and the loop diuretics are generally used. And examples of the thiazide diuretics are the hydrochlorothiazide, thiazide diuretics, chlorthalidone, and loop diuretic furosemides. Beta adrenergic blocker, beta blockers in the treatment of the hypertension. Beneficial effect of beta adrenergic blocker in the treatment of hypertension associated with chronic kidney disease, because it reduces the renin release. And if the renin release is reduced, the angiotensin 2 formation will be inhibited. Counteract sympathetic overactivity in dialysis patient, and that's why decrease the risk of sudden cardiac death and improve the survival in heart failure. And there is one dose adjustment requirement. Less lipophilic agents. Less lipophilic means maybe they are more water soluble. Example, atenolol and the nadolol requires dosage adjustment in the chronic kidney patients. Why? Due to decreased clearance in chronic kidney disease, and these are removed by the dialysis. Patient should be monitored for clinical response to this beta adrenergic blocker while starting dialysis. And other Antihypertensive agents used in the treatment of chronic kidney disease are the alpha blockers, prazosin. In patient with BPH, we can say benign prostatic hyperplasia. So these are the management of the hypertension in the chronic kidney disease. So most widely used drug if the patient having the albuminuria and plus diabetes, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers or aliskiren. If the patient is contraindicated to these drugs, we can use calcium channel blocker, and amongst the calcium channel blocker, dihydropyridine agents amlodipine and felodipines are significant. And if the patient having the chronic kidney disease with the edema, then we can use diuretics, thiazide diuretics and the loop diuretics. And beta blocker, we can use the beta blocker if the patient having the heart failure. And the last, maybe if the patient having the benign prostatic hyperplasia with the hypertension, alpha adrenergic blockers, prazosin. So this explanation will answer the questions of this case 2. Let us move towards the case 3. So we just discussed the case 2. Mention how you treat the edema in this patient. So we can use here as a edema, we can use diuretics, thiazide diuretics and the loop diuretics. Mention the antihypertensive drug best of choice for the treatment of hypertension. The best of choice here, we can say angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers, because here the patient is having albuminuria and plus diabetes. That's why these drugs are significantly benefits. And how can you monitor the treatment of hypertension in this patient? As we discussed, the monitoring requires the kidney function test from month to years and monitoring of the hyperkalemia and albuminuria. Case 3. A 35-year-old man has been admitted to the intensive care unit with acute renal failure, which developed following a routine cholecystectomy. There is the surgical procedures for the cholecyst. The patient was connected to ECG monitor and resulting the trace indicated absent P wave and widening of QRS complex. His electrolyte pictures shows the following: sodium 138 normal, potassium 7.5, increase, we can say it is hyperkalemia, bicarbonate normal, urea 32, yes, increased, creatinine 572 increased, and pH is 7.2 normal. So here main remarkable diagnosis is hyperkalemia and the increase in the urea. So it is, we can say, acidosis. The patient is 35-year-old due to acute renal failure and due to cholecystectomy. The patient's ECG shows absent P wave and widening of the QRS complex. Potassium level is increased and it is 7.5. Mention the drugs regimen choice for the treatment of this life-threatening hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia means increase in the serum potassium level. ECG changes in this patient, justify your answer. Mention the drugs regimen choice for lowering serum potassium in this patient, justify your answer. Mention the drugs regimen of choice for treatment of acidosis in this patient, justify your answer. And what is sodium polystyrene sulfonate for the treatment of this patient, and justify your answer. Let us discuss the management of the hyperkalemia. And here there is if you see, this is P, Q, R, yes, this is the ECG. We can say this is a P, an absence of P wave, Q, here R, S, T. This is the normal ECG. And what happened here, ECG in this case, the P waves. The P waves is absent. Let us just a minute. Yes. What is the diagnosis? This P wave is absent and plus widening of the QRS complex. This QRS complex is wide. So let us see the management plan. For the hyperkalemia. Yes. Treatment of hyperkalemia. At eGFR greater than 10 ml per minute, hyperkalemia is rare. But what are the causes of hyperkalemia in chronic kidney disease? Decreased kidney potassium excretion. If the kidney is not able to decrease the potassium, if there is increased the potassium intake by the patients, and acidosis, redistribution of potassium into extracellular fluid, and if there is 0.1 unit change, if there is 0.1 unit change in the blood pH, there is an inverse of the 0.6 milli equivalent per liter change in the serum potassium. And this some drug increases the hyperkalemia. Which are these drugs? Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers, and the potassium sparing diuretics, triamterene, amiloride, spironolactone, and eplerenone. What are the manifestations on the hyperkalemia? Weakness, confusion, muscular or respiratory paralysis. And what are the effect on the ECG change? ECG change includes peaked T waves, decreased R wave amplitude, wide QRS complex, which happens in our case, prolonged PR interval, complete heart block, and absent P waves, which was happens in our case, and finally ventricular arrhythmias or cardiac arrest. So hyperkalemic ECG changes are uncommon at potassium concentration less than 7 milliequivalent per liter, but occurs regularly if the potassium concentration is greater than 8 milliequivalent per liter. If the potassium concentration is less than 6.5 ml per liter and there is no ECG change, treatment is unnecessary. If there is no ECG change and if the potassium concentration is less than 6.5 milliequivalent per liter. But close monitoring for hyperkalemia and other symptoms, and especially after starting these drugs, is very important. These drugs, which increases the hyperkalemia. And that's why if the potassium concentration is above 6.5 milliequivalent per liter and with neuromuscular symptoms and changes in ECG, treatment should be instituted. And in our case, the potassium concentration is more than 6.5 equivalent per liter. So we need the treatment. What is the treatment? This is the treatment. If you see here graph, what is the effect? This is a normal serum potassium. If 3.5 to 5 millimole per liter, you can see this type of graph. Serum potassium approximately 7. So the T waves are elevated. See, the T waves are elevated. And if there is a hyperkalemia in the serum potassium, approximately 8 to 9 millimole and 10, see the what happens in the ECG graphs. The goal of treatment of hyperkalemia in chronic kidney disease: prevention of the adverse event related to excessive potassium, reduction of serum potassium concentration, and the management of the potassium intake. How can we reverse the cardiac effect of hyperkalemia? And that's we need intravenous calcium gluconate is the drug of choice to reverse the cardiac effect. 10 to 30 ml calcium gluconate of 10% solution over 5 to 10 minutes is used. And how it acts? Mechanism of action: calcium replaces and maintains the body calcium, reverse the cardiac effect of hyperkalemia. Calcium gluconate. Okay, it will reverse the cardiac effect, but how can we reduce the serum potassium? For the reduction of the serum potassium, we need shifting of the potassium ion intracellularly, and we need regular insulin and the glucose. Regular insulin 10 units in 500 ml, 10% dextrose is administered intravenously for 60 minutes. And how it acts? Insulin and intracellular shift of potassium. When insulin is given, the intracellular shift of the potassium, deposition of potassium with glycogen in the liver, and reduction in the serum potassium. But serum glucose level should be monitored during therapy for at least 6 hours to avoid hypoglycemia. So we need regular insulin and dextrose to reduce the serum potassium. And for the reversal of the cardiac effect, we need intravenous calcium gluconate. What about the alkali therapy? To reduce the serum potassium, we need here intravenous sodium bicarbonate. Alkali therapy, 50 to 100 ml of 8.4% in severe hyperkalemia or metabolic acidosis, because sodium bicarbonate restores the bicarbonate that the renal tubule cannot reabsorb from the filtrate and increases the arterial pH, and which lead to shift the potassium into the cell and reduce the serum potassium concentration. So to reduce the serum potassium concentration, we need intravenous sodium bicarbonate. And removing potassium from the body, we need to reduce the serum potassium by dialysis in acute life-threatening hyperkalemia, and we can use exchange resin. Sodium polystyrene sulfonate is given oral or rectal. How it acts? Sodium polystyrene sulfonate removes the resin that exchange sodium ion for the potassium ions in the intestine and decrease the serum potassium level. So sodium polystyrene sulfonate is an exchange resin which reduces the serum potassium level, and onset of action orally administered 2 hours, and for retention enema 1 hour. So these are the management plan for the hyperkalemia. Alkali therapy, intravenous sodium bicarbonate, and plus exchange resin sodium polystyrene sulfonate, which remove the resin that exchanges, this sodium polystyrene sulfonate is a resin which exchanges the sodium ion for potassium ions in the intestine and decrease the serum potassium level. And beta 2 adrenergic agonist salbutamol may